Welcome to another episode of the ProLiteracy blogcast. My name is Kevin Morgan. I'm the president and CEO of ProLiteracy. The mission of ProLiteracy is to change lives and communities through the power of literacy. Our guest today is Dr. Margaret Patterson. Dr. Patterson is a senior researcher with Research Allies for Lifelong Learning in the Washington, D.C. metro area. Research Allies partners with nonprofit organizations, post-secondary institutions, and state agencies to apply research and conduct evaluations that support adult educators and learners. If you want to find out more information, researchallies.org. She has authored 9 PIAAC papers since 2013, and the article we are talking about today won a 2020 Exemplary Paper Award from the American Educational Research Association for Adult Education. Previously, she served as research director at GED Testing Service and American Council on Education, and as associate director of adult education in Kansas. She administered and taught in adult education programs in Nebraska, Nevada, and Kansas, and presents extensively throughout the USA. So, Margaret, welcome to the program. Thank you for taking the time.
Great to be here.
You recently wrote an article in the spring issue of Adult Literacy Education, the International Journal of Literacy, Language, and Numeracy, titled PIAAC Numeracy Skills and Home Use Among Adult English Learners. Your paper examines numeracy skills and home skill levels of English learners. So I guess one of the first questions is, why are numeracy skills important, and how do they differ from mathematical skills?
That's actually a great question, and it was a question that I had when I first started pulling together the paper. And so I looked at some work of my friend Linda Ginsberg, and she basically described it as numeracy skills and practices are more situated and less decontextualized and less abstract than mathematics. So it's that sense of context. So for example, if somebody says 24/7, those are numbers we hear a lot, but if it's just in the abstract and you're not familiar with the term, an English language learner might go, huh? But if you say, well, it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and then you do the math on that, boy, we're talking 8,736 hours a year. That's a lot of time. Sure. So it's that sense of giving it some context.
Okay.
In addition to that, the PIAAC numeracy group defines numeracy as the ability to access, use, interpret, and communicate mathematical information ideas. That's a whole lot there, but it's actually an important concept associated with what numeracy is versus mathematics. So it's being able to use, it's not just basic math or advanced math, it's being able to use the math skills, the numeracy skills to organize information, to do financial literacy, or especially important today, health literacy, being able to deal with health issues in using math.
Great, that's very helpful. Okay, this article addressed 3 research questions, all of them good. But the first question was, what are average numeracy skill levels and numeracy at-home use rates of adult English learners in the aggregate? So what were some of the key findings you found in addressing this question?
So one of the first things that popped out was that on average, adult English learners are at a level 1 in numeracy skills. And a lot of people say, okay, what do you mean by level 1? So there are 5 levels of PIAAC, from below level 1 all the way up to level 5. And actually 4 and 5 are combined together because there's very few people at that super top level in any given skill area. But level 1 is pretty much on the low end of the spectrum. And so that's doing tasks like a one-step problem, a very simple process of something like counting things, sorting things, doing a basic percent like 50%. So very, very basic elements. And that's on average where these folks are scoring in numeracy. We can also see some differences by the language of the background questionnaire that they took, or their differences as a population from the general population. And so both of those differences were really large. I think the other part of your question is, what skills are they using? And one of the things that we found is that they're using financial numeracy skills most often. So that's things like reviewing a financial statement of some kind, or conducting an online transaction, figuring out costs and budgets, those things that we all have to do at home, or some of us at work. But they're infrequently using things like basic math. And we heard a whole lot of never when it came to using advanced math skills or employing numeracy skills to organize information. So if most people are not doing something ever, that's probably not a good thing.
Good point. Okay, the second question that was addressed was controlling for education attainment, family background, and health. How does numeracy at home use of adult English learners predict numeracy skill levels? So how does an English learner's use of numeracy skills at home help predict variation in PIAAC numeracy scores?
Right, so as I mentioned just a moment ago, we have these increments of time, or time use essentially for the skills. And it ranges from never, less than once a month, all the way on up to using something every day. So if you factor in the person's education attainment, their parents' education attainment, which is very important as well, and their health, and you start at those basic elements, for every increment that they use a skill, for example, for every increment of using basic or advanced math skills, their numeracy score, their skill level would go up 1 point. For every increment of use of skills for organization, it would go up 2 points. And for every increment of using financial numeracy skills, it would go up 3 points. And you may recall that earlier I mentioned that they tended to use these financial skills a little bit more than anything else. So that's actually a good indicator. If you're doing that quite a bit, that can really bring up your skill level.
Financial skills always pay off. Okay, the third question that was addressed in the article was, how does numeracy at home use of adult English learners differ among discrete groups, and what are descriptive characteristics of each group? So can you talk a little bit about what were these 6 discrete groups and how did they differ in scoring?
So I'll refer everybody to table 2 specifically in the report, but we do have 6 groups there, and the way that they differ, I describe them in terms of age, and I use some groupings that we hear a lot, terms like millennial, baby boomer, Generation X. Those are terms that are generally used out there to differentiate people by age. But I also looked at their education and their parents' education, and then some other important characteristics like their health status and even their disability status information, which turned out to be pretty important. And all 6 of these groups could actually be in the adult education target population. So let me give you, for an example, again, I'm looking right at table 2 as I talk about this, but the low baby boomer group, the typical age for that group was 55 to 59 years, which is not surprising given the group that they're in. But this particular group, they did not graduate from high school and their parents did not graduate from high school. So there's that, long-term issue of not completing school, or perhaps they were even from countries where higher levels of education isn't even an option. That's very common as well. They had fair or poor health, and we actually see some pretty high levels of difficulty in vision and in hearing, and in the highest level in this entire study for people being on permanent disability. So that kind of gives you just a little bit of a sense of what does that one particular group look like. So looking at the 6 groups themselves, there's quite a range of scores, not surprising because we have a lot of individuals. But if we look at the low baby boomer group that I was just talking about, they tend to score at level 1 or even below that. So they're really struggling in terms of numeracy. If you look at, and I won't describe all the details, but if you look at the Generation X, you're going to see people who are scoring on average at level 2. So another level higher than that. So there is some variability, but within the groups, we can kind of see some trends in what they're doing.
Terrific. Okay, the last question I have is, this research article contains a lot of interesting findings. And as you know, a lot of the ProLiteracy member programs around the country, a large percentage of the students are English learners. So what are the implications for adult education instruction on how they might benefit numeracy skills of adult English learners?
So one of the findings of this report is that by expanding numeracy skill use in these areas that I was just talking about can really benefit the numeracy skills of adult English learners. It's kind of a two-way relationship, but really if it's kind of a, in fact, it's in the literature, use it or lose it. If you use the skills, you'll tend to keep them. If you don't use them, you tend to lose them. And so that's important. So why is that important? One answer is that it strengthens English learners, particularly for immigrants, ability to fully participate in society. And that's important. We've seen several examples of that in the literature before and in real life. But on a more personal level, it can really improve people's daily lives. In the article, I refer to Donna Curry's 2017 Using the PIAAC Numeracy Framework to Guide Instruction. And it has a wealth of information for instructors. And I kind of break it down in the article as, you know, what they can look for and the features. But Curry tells us from the minute we wake up, we make multiple decisions each day based on numeracy skills. So I woke up this morning and first thing I said, do I have more time left to sleep? So I had to kind of, you know, do a little bit of math in there to figure out if I had any time left or if I had to hop out of bed. Secondly, I might say something like, well, what's the range of the temperatures going to be outside? And so I had to kind of figure that too. So right from the get-go, I'm already thinking about math from the beginning. So Donna Curry recommends asking questions about adult numeracy skill use. So actually an instructor could go back to table 1 in the paper and look at the different types of numeracy skills use and just with them figure out what kind of behaviors as far as numeracy they're already engaging in. What are they doing? Instructors could also start discussions with them on how they use numeracy skills. Maybe they could do that during a program orientation or at the start of some numeracy lessons within English instruction. Students could interview each other about how they use math, what they're doing with it in their daily lives, that type of thing. She gives lots of planning examples and talks about different contextual and complexity factors to calculate costs. So there's lots and lots of examples, and really all of these ideas for instruction can benefit English learners' numeracy skill use. And then that in turn can support their level of numeracy skills.
Great. Well, Margaret, I want to thank you for being our guest today and discussing your research article. Thank you very much.
It's great to be here. I appreciate the opportunity.
Our pleasure. And If you want to read Margaret's research article, which I would encourage you to do, go to proliteracy.org and click on the spring 2020 issue of Adult Literacy Education, the International Journal of Literacy, Language, and Numeracy. The name of the article we have discussed today is PIAAC Numeracy Skills in Home Use Among Adult English Learners. So Margaret, again, thank you. Stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you again real soon.
Okay. Thanks.